I'm here with my guy, Anjan Katta. He is the founder of Daylight, which is a computer device that is going to revolutionize, guys, I promise, the world. This is something that I'm really excited about for my kids and my family. Anjan, welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks for having me on. It's been a long
Dude,
journey to get here.
yeah,
So
man. Dude, what you're doing right now, it doesn't even do it justice, my introduction. So I want you to kind of introduce it better for people that don't even know what they're like, dude, what is Daylight? But I mean, I've been following the computer space for a while, and blue light and flicker devices, all of these things are distracting us, putting strain on our eyes. Um, I mean, I'd even bear to argue that we're seeing things like macular degeneration and a lot of these eye diseases due to a lot of these devices, our phones, our tablets, all these things. And there's no healthy solution until your device came along, like very recently. And I got super excited because I'm in the market to buy something for my kids because they're homeschooled. And so I was super pumped, man, to have you on and chat about this. But yeah, tell people if they don't know what the heck is Daylight, what are we talking about? What is it?
uh, Daylight's pretty simple. Thanks for having me on. It's just trying to answer the question of what does a computer look like if it was built with the best principles of health.
You even say on your website, I think it's like the computer de-invented, right? Or something like that.
Because there is an obsession with technology, more pixels, more RAM, more this. They try to sell you on the pizzazz, the sex appeal of it, more features. And the reality is none of that matters if it doesn't care about your mental or physical health. And so our first product is a tablet, and our core invention is a computer screen technology. Um, Maybe a little bit hard to see here, but essentially what we did is we invented the first blue light free, flicker free, be able to use in outdoor sunlight, high refresh rate computer display. And the goal here was to simply re-examine, if you were to start a computer from scratch, what would you do? And we're starting with light, but the goal is over time, the point of Daylight is EMFs, materials, ergonomics, distraction, the entire aspect of whether it be centralized or decentralized primitives to the software. How do you get away from gatekeepers? It's an attempt to really rethink a computer to be kind of people first.
People first. What, man? Is that a good monetary business idea? Putting people first. I love it, but there's so many. I appreciate you saying that. There's just so many people out there we know, right, in the health world too, especially like just creating products that are not safe and effective, creating products just to make money. And so it's so refreshing that and I've heard you talk about this before. It's like you've built a product that is going after some big giants, the Amazons, the Bezos, the Walmart. I mean, you're taking down the Kindles, right? You're taking about a lot of people, and it's just so healthy and it's so refreshing that what you just said there is putting the people first, putting the people in mind, right?
I think that's the call to arms. Yes, it's hard. It's not going to be easy. There's not much examples around, but like darned if we didn't try. Like I think that's the problem is our values across society are being determined by a couple of these central gatekeepers who then make choices on behalf of us. And all we're trying to say is no, what if we actually instantiated our values into the products we make? And people will vote with their time, attention, and if it's going to exist, it's going to be because it's a bottom up movement of
Yeah.
us rallying around new products and companies and principles.
Yeah, man. So amazing. For people that are maybe wondering why I'm so jacked about this, and maybe they're wondering, Joel, why do you care? Why would you want a de-evolved computer? If people are coming into this new and they don't understand, you're talking about things like flicker rate and blue light free. Why should people care? Because they may not even care. They don't even know what we're talking about.
Yeah. Um, the important kind of historical frame to have in mind is what we call computer screens, whether they're in your iPhone or iPad or TV or monitor or whatever it is. That is actually only one type of computer screen. The thing is, they are extremely great at displaying video content, video games, a variety of things. And so that's what's been adopted. They're called emissive or transmissive displays. That's what's been adopted in all of our devices. The thing, though, is they were only thinking about it from the perspective of can it serve content really well, mostly videos, TVs, games, and is it easy to engineer? There was never any understanding of, hey, if a human's going to be interacting with this all day, how does it impact them? And so there are these things that they never knew about nor thought about, and now that they kind of know about it, but they're so locked into it because everybody on Earth is using this. It'd be inconvenient for them to switch. Is we're realizing how deeply dysregulating to our metabolism, our circadian rhythms, our sleep, our mood, the light emissions from computer screens are, because at their core they are unnatural. And that's the key thing here: is normal transmissive computer displays are unnatural. They don't have full spectrum of light. You're stuck using them indoors. They are very high in blue light, and they have something called flicker. And all of these things you don't see in the natural world. We are not evolved for them. This is not what our physiology is built for. And so when you're interacting with blue light that then is by itself a narrowband blue light, which you get from a normal computer screen, you cause all sorts of circadian dysregulation. Because what happens in the real world is that type of blue light only really happens at midday, at like 1 p.m. or around that time. When the sun is setting, when the sun is rising, you don't get blue light. Most of it is red light. With a campfire, with whatever we would do in our natural worlds, it would be this warm red, orange light. But our computer screens, even if they look normal or they look white, actually underneath it, they're using a blue LED that gets converted to white to then shine everything else. And that is the core sin, because that was the easiest way to make an LED energy efficient. But no one ever knew about, well, what you're doing then is you are incredibly confusing the body. So the body's clocks, which is what circadian rhythms are about, are dependent on what's coming from the environment being natural, being stable, right? If it's 4 p.m. because the sun's a particular place in the sky and has a particular spectrum, like your body can trust that that's the case. But for the first time in history, let's say it's 9 p.m. and you're using a normal computer, you are communicating with that computer screen to your body that it's 1 p.m.
Right.
And so it's insulin, it's glucagon, it's growth hormone, it's cortisol, all of these different hormonal patterns that are time related, that all operate in this beautiful symphony, are all super confused. Wait, what? It's 1 p.m.? Okay, I guess I'm gonna be in a sympathetic state. Okay, I guess I'm going to start to release cortisol. Okay, I guess I'm gonna put excess dopamine into the system. And that is what starts a whole set of bodily confusion, which we call circadian dysfunction. The immediate consequence is it starts to mess up with your sleep. It's harder to go to sleep on time. It takes longer. It's harder to get up in the morning. But the deeper kind of consequences of this unmanaged blue light is you get circadian dysfunction, which shows up as anxiety, as fatigue, as metabolic issues, and so on and so on. And so this is something that in the last decade has really started to come out of how deeply impactful this is, because medicine is always focused on chemicals. And then, it became about food and exercise. And now we're really starting to appreciate, light is one of the most crucial aspects of biology. And so targeting blue light by creating a blue light free computer is like one core step to then having a computer actually be fine for you to use every day for the rest of your life. And there's a couple other things we got to as well, like flicker and being able to use it in the direct sun. But to start with blue light.
Yeah, blue light is the major one that I think a lot of us, even people that aren't aware, flicker to me, I don't hear a lot of people talking about. But us in the biohacking kind of really geeking out holistic health world, we know a lot about more about that, I'd say, than the average. But I think blue light is becoming more and more a talking point. People even that aren't too aware of these things are starting to hear more and more about blue light and how it's disrupting your sleep. So that's a major one. I love the way you broke that down, because I didn't realize that. I thought blue light actually was something that we saw in the morning sun, because it was something that helped trigger us, our bodies, to say, hey, make cortisol, get up, go. I didn't realize it was actually later in the day, more at 1 p.m. So I had no idea.
There is some blue light in the beginning of the day, but it's relatively balanced by the other light. It's when it starts to get to noon and so on, that's when blue light is dominant.
When it gets to be like this, right, where the cell phone is just that blaring blue light, that's what you're talking about. That's that
and
one.
It has no red, it has no green, it's completely unbalanced. And that's
right. Man, there's so much. I want to talk about insulin resistance and dopamine, because that's going to be a big one too. But really quick, tell people, because you had your own struggles with ADHD, depression, and anxiety, right? Was that what started you? Was that the impetus for creating Daylight, or was there some other reasons?
Yeah, the daylight for me was me just trying to solve my own personal problem, which is I feel like I'm a canary in the coal mine. I am uniquely susceptible to blue light, to flicker, to the eye strain, to the distraction of a modern computer. And so I was super struggling to paint a picture. Oh gosh, I was sleeping at 3 or 4 a.m. every day for months on end. Often would end up pulling an all nighter because I wouldn't be able to fall asleep. I'd be using a computer, like an iPad in bed. I would have hundreds of tabs open. I would just be so stuck and addicted. Uh, they call it entrainment, where what you do is you get stuck into a loop that your body is in a sympathetic response and you're a bit tense and there's a bit of cortisol, and then you're seeking dopamine to kind of to get some sort of reward to even that out. And so I was just so distracted and miserable on computers. My sleep was terrible. My eyes hurt a lot. My vitamin D levels were shot. I was stuck inside all day. Over time, I found certain setups in certain places where I can try to get a computer outside, but for the most part, that's impractical. And so I was in Silicon Valley, the place where personal computing has come to be. And I went to visit the personal computing um, history museum, and it's right outside of Google. And I was like, what is this, dude? Like this thing that's supposed to be help make us like the best versions of ourselves. And God damn it, computing is a miracle. It is incredible what you can do. It's a magical piece of paper. You can talk through the ether. It's incredible. But this thing is actively harming my life deeply. And so that was the impetus where I just wanted to declare bankruptcy on computing and say, we made a computer that harnessed some of its better points and mitigated its negative things, both to your physical, mental, and intellectual health, what could that look like? And that's what Daylight was, is a journey on trying to reinvent the computer, to your point, by de-inventing it of
Yeah.
sorts.
Yeah, so cool. I want to talk a little bit about dopamine, because this is a hot topic for me right now. And, you know, as an entrepreneur, as someone who, is required in many ways to be a successful entrepreneur, many of us, let's face it, we have to be on our phones. We are posting things constantly. And I'll tell you, man, this stupid thing, I've realized so much, it is so addicting. And they have got me. And I've interviewed Dr. Anna Lamke, who wrote
Oh,
the
wow.
book Dopamine Nation.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, and just read Jonathan Haidt's book. I don't know if you're familiar with Jonathan
Anxious
Haidt, The
generation. Yeah.
Anxious
Yeah. How
Generation,
you
and
get it.
so we've got some problems, on hand. And by the way, someone else you might want to talk to is Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman, and he wrote a book in 2016 called The Assassination Generation, talking about why they're committing so many suicides and mental health at such at a crazy rate right now, right? But also the mass shootings. And when he breaks it all down, you come back to it, it's a lot of this isolation, it's a lot of this disconnection, it's a lot of playing video games, okay? Because it's creating them to actually be shooters. It like makes it normal to be a shooter, right? But all this, needless to say, is that we know more than ever, and Anna Lemke talks about this, the baseline for our dopamine, it's so high now. So in order for me to get to like my normal level of dopamine, and dopamine, for anybody who doesn't know, is like that wanting, that motivation, that get up and go. And so for me to even reach that level, instead of, let's say, watching, I don't know, 2 TikTok videos, I need to watch 10. And then that's going to progress to me needing to watch 20. And that's how they keep us going in this cycle. How is Daylight helping, in your opinion? How is it helping with that, some of that dopamine, maybe bringing my levels back a little bit back down, or forcing me not to be so interested in or captivated by this damn device that I'm like, okay, you're
Right.
creating a physiological, biological response that makes it less enticing for me.
Right. I mean, those guys are the experts. Those are the Dr. Lemke and so on are the people, who inspired and taught us, what our core skill is in inventing a new thing. But the core principle we wanted to apply here is breaking the Faustian bargain of you can't be a complete Luddite and let go of technology, as you're pointing out.
Yep.
It's just not realistic. There's too many things that are digital, Google Docs, school, whatever it may be. But that is exactly the place that then has all of the high supernormal stimuli things, the pings, the bongs, the notifications, the one click away, the tabs, the YouTubes. So that was kind of the question of like, is there a way to kind of give you the minimal access to a computer through a substrate that is not overstimulating, that is not a supernormal stimuli? And
Yeah.
so that's what this is if you look at the technology that we created, it's a paper-like screen that's reflective. What does that mean? Is it's not like a normal computer screen that's a flashlight. You know, your iPhone is completely black when it's turned off. It's not producing any light. You turn it on, it's white. This is off. You can see it's cream colored
Mm-hmm.
because it's reflecting the light that's hitting it. It's like a piece of paper. It's like your lawn chair. It's like anything in the natural world. The things in the natural world are analog or reflective or paper like. And that's what this is. And so, practically speaking, what you're able to do is you've removed the color, you've removed the bright light, you remove flicker, you remove blue light, you've removed all of the things that kind of make it overstimulating. And what you then have is essentially a boring interface to then do a computational thing. And so we talk a lot about like dopamine fasting and trying to do things that are not supernormal stimuli. That's essentially what the point of this was, is how do you make basically a boring computer that's an appliance. So you can still do your work, you can still do your school, but it itself is not a bag of Cheetos. You know, it is not something that is going to draw you.
Yeah. Okay. That's really good, man. I mean, I think anything we can do to mitigate and make it a part of our day, but also make it not create that. We're getting enough already, like we mentioned. We're getting enough. So to have something be your regular day to day device that you're doing, and not and at least kind of bring your levels, I guess, to normalize them. It's really key.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like the equivalent of printing something out and then interacting with it. Like that's what we've made. Is essentially is a computer that is printing it to a paper-like surface. The core of this, somebody said it really well, which was why I really like the daylight. Is for my kid is it's more interesting than picking his nose or bullying his sister, but it's less interesting than the backyard. And
Right.
that's the core of this. Is the goal as a computer is it should not be a destination. It should just be a tool. It should just be something that you use to get the job done. It's like a toaster or something. It just gets the job done. And then you can go back to actually the parts of your life that are meant to be colorful, that are meant to be interesting. Your relationships, the outdoors, nature, whatever it is.
But the neat thing too is you can download apps and stuff. You can have Spotify on the phone, on the tablet, right? You can get all the apps. You're just not getting the color. You're not getting the hits. Are you getting notifications and stuff too, or are
No,
those?
it's completely bonked in
That's
notifications.
amazing.
So the operating system on top of it, we've tried to make it distraction free as possible. So you can get kind of the core useful apps like a Spotify, a Google Docs, a Google Classroom, whatever are the main apps you need for school or work or whatever it is. But yeah, we've tried to change the defaults such that it's not distracting. And then the core difference is just the display. It doesn't feel like a computer. It doesn't read like a computer. And so you just end up using it kind of like a notebook or a printout or a to-do list or a calendar. It just becomes the kind of a Swiss Army knife of computing things.
Yeah, and I know you're one of a guy I followed a long time, Dr. Jack Kruse, and I know he's a good friend of yours, and that's how I actually discovered you. Jack Kruse has been talking about blue light. He's been ringing the bell. I don't know, maybe 2 decades now, maybe 20 years. I'm not too sure. But Cruz, I've seen him. One of the neat things, he's in El Salvador. He's on the beaches, and he's got his daylight with him, and he's reading in the sun, which I used to have a Kindle or whatever. You can't do that with a Kindle. There's like a lot of reflection. I've noticed with your device, it doesn't seem like you get that reflective kind of. It really is like reading a freaking book.
Yeah, because that's actually the physical principle in which our computer display works. Is essentially it's a piece of paper, but the ink is programmable. So the ink moves. So it can make letters, it can make shapes, it can do that. And so that's why you can literally use it in the direct sun because it's like a piece of paper. It reflects the light into your eye, it bounces it. So what's cool is instead of a normal computer screen, which is fighting nature, which is trying to produce its own light, which is unnatural and of course going to be weaker than the sun, so you can't see it. We're actually utilizing nature. We're in harmony with nature. And so we're using the sunlight that then's bouncing into your eyes, and then you're getting full spectrum light, including infrared and things like that. And so that's one of the things that we're hoping becomes possible is more computing you could do outdoors, more computing you can do with your feet in the dirt and ground, which can help potentially with some of the EMF things that some folks are affected by. And so the way we think about it is you got to eliminate junk light, which is blue light with flicker, uh, and you got to be able to give people the ability to get natural full spectrum light. And so that's the core thing of what we're trying to do. What Jack Cruz has shown, and we're just simply implementing, some of his wisdom and knowledge, is this leads to a surprising change in one's mood, in sleep, in energy, uh, inability to just enjoy things that otherwise you would be craving. Like, I don't think people realize this, Joel, but there's a vicious cycle in which the blue light and the flicker and the bright light is actually putting you in a place where you are more addictable to Facebook or Instagram or that. And so the hardware is physiologically setting you up to then mentally want to then binge on the dopamine. And what's
Wow.
fascinating is then when you try, like we have run tests where you try to run Facebook or Instagram or TikTok on a daylight, and it's just extremely boring. Like there's no addiction there. And I think that is so fascinating and under discussed, that there is a physiological element to the addictiveness of all of these social media feeds and modern dopamine computer trips.
Yeah, man. That's why I'm really excited, because I had an assumption there, but I didn't know if that was true. I know you talked about it in your when I was reading about your own addictions and stuff, and you said it had curbed it. So I was like, wow, I'm wondering if that does have a play in with dopamine. It does have a play, and I didn't realize that the blue light could actually trigger that. To your point, and really, it's almost like it's priming the pump for the cycle. It's like step one of the addiction cycle, hit you with the blue light, the flicker, and create that cycle of distraction. So, wow.
That's hard to change. There's a phenomenon too, if you're curious, for a kicker called screen apnea, where when you notice people on normal computer screens, their breathing rate gets shallower and less frequent. And so you can measure this with the tidal volume. And so literally we're breathing in a shallow way that's causing us to make us more anxious. We're getting put into that fight or flight response. And so what's cool is when you're reading paper analog things, a paper like display like ours, you get a lot more of a normal breathing pattern, a lot more of a normal breathing volume. And so you're able to literally be a little bit calmer. And I think that's powerful, which is we were so jacked up with our normal computers. So.
Dude, I was just thinking, and I'm sure it's on your mind too, but I've been thinking about this in the cell phone industry. I mean, we could have a daylight cell phone in the near future with the same tech, right? I mean, to me, that would be fascinating, because one of my big goals in the next few years is, as my business starts to scale, is to get away from this damn thing. And I know it's going to still be part of my life, but one of the big things that I want to have moving forward when it comes to cell phones is that having something like the daylight, so that it is the daylight I don't want it to be addicting. I really don't. I don't want to have to be on. I want it to give me the stimulus that there is no stimulus. And then the second thing that's big for me is sovereignty. Just all the tracking from all these big techs I know they're tracking my stuff, and I don't like that. So, and I think with the daylight, you guys do a lot also with that privacy piece too. What, right?
Totally. The vision we have is take our display technology, live paper, and take our distraction-free operating system, and then apply it for a bunch of different form factors. So a phone would definitely be one of the most powerful things we could do.
Yeah.
We started with a tablet. We want to build a monitor. We want to get to a phone, and we think that's like how we can have massive impact. Every parent, of course, faces the challenge of when to get their kid a phone, if ever, and we're hoping we can play a role in giving some options there. And what's powerful is because you control the hardware, you control the operating system, you then actually at root cause can have impact on sovereignty, on being decentralized, on being
Yes.
free and secure and private. Because we don't have the same incentives. We're not trying to sell you ads. We actually we're trying to make money on the hardware. We actually can change the operating system such there is no tracking. Even right now, we have no tracking at all of any of the devices. We can block any of the requests. We can ad block at the operating system level. There's a lot of interesting things we're looking into in terms of using Bitcoin and Lightning and Nostr and things like that to be able to enable you to have decentralized payment rails. And so the possibility here of come for the health but stay for the sovereignty, I think is super fascinating.
Yeah,
And
brother.
it's definitely a long-term play.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it, man. I love what you stand for and what you're doing. Talk to us about flicker. You mentioned it briefly, and we talked a lot about the blue light. Where do you see the flicker either? And for people that don't know, as a health concern, it sounds like there's a lot that it ties into maybe dopamine distraction. But I just thought that the flicker had to do a lot with eye strain, and it was
Right.
actually making you weak, like your mitochondria. There's a lot of mitochondria in the eyes, and so the eyes have to work a ton to
Right.
keep up with the flicker. That was my understanding, but I haven't researched this too much. I know you know way more.
Yeah.
What should people know about flicker?
Well, that is a big part of it. Eye strain is a massive part of it. And I mean, I think it's kind of ridiculous if we're going to be using these things every day for the rest of our lives that we're just sitting there doing this all the time and accepting that's what it is. So the elimination of eye strain, I do think is a core aspect of this. It's just fascinating to see with Flickr what we face chronically and subacutely, those who face it acutely, what happens to them. So what I mean by that is if you look at people who have concussions or traumatic brain injuries, one of the core difficulties in the weeks after the concussion or the head injury is screen time. Is it causes a lot of eye strain and headaches and migraines.
Wow.
And what's happening, the theory is essentially the flicker is putting a really high cognitive load on your brain that most of us kind of just have enough surplus capacity in our brain to buffer. So we may feel it as a little bit of tension, a little bit of anxiety, but we don't really notice it in each moment, though it may accumulate over time. When we get a concussion or a traumatic brain injury, that surplus, that buffer is gone. And so it's fascinating that you give them paper or something like that and it's okay, but you give them a flickering screen and suddenly they have headaches and migraines and it really hurts. And so I think that is pointing out to the cognitive aspect of our brain is able to, in a large percentage of the population, detect that flicker, but it doesn't really affect us unless we're more vulnerable. It does affect us, but we don't notice it until we're more vulnerable, as if we got a concussion or a TBI. So I think that's pretty powerful evidence of it having impact on us.
Yeah. So, and it's one of those things. The way I think about it too is just it's happening in the background. We don't see it, but your eyes are constantly having to adjust and keep up and maintain. And so I think a lot of times too, it's just it makes you weaker. It expends more energy for you,
Right.
and we only have so much every day. And so it's like if we're spending most of our day doing what we're doing, and then I want to come back and be with my family and engage with my wife or engage my prefrontal cortex, I might have already used a lot of that executive decision making due to something that I didn't even realize was zapping me. So
Exactly.
that's a big deal, man. Especially if you got people on the phone, on their freaking phone or computer 8 hours a day. Same thing. What I said. Then they come home. They want to be present they want to be the heroes in their family. It can be hard to do.
And that's the problem. Something like blue blockers, they can't really affect flicker. You need to actually hardware level change. There's no app you can download that can change it too. It needs to be changed at the hardware level. So that's where we have no flicker at all at a hardware level. And that's to your point of coming back home to your family. Like we're making a computer. Our point though is get your job done with your computer and get back to real life. Like we're not trying to say computers are horrible. We're not all trying to say also we're making an amazing computer that is so captivating. The whole point is what is the least amount of computer we need? And I think that's the future, Joel, is it's not about VR, which is the most amount of computer and living in the computer and taping that thing to your head. And that's the rest of your reality. No, we're saying your reality actually, how about real reality? Real
And
reality is
AI too, brother.
so
I think AI is going to be another thing. I think, there's a lot of people talking about how AI is going to be a good thing. It's going to buy us back more time, right? Now, all the stupid, meaningless tasks that we had to do, I don't have to think about it anymore. Now I can be present with my kids. I think, unfortunately, it's going to buy us more time to then do more BS stuff that we shouldn't be doing, right? And go down, oh, what else could I do with AI? What else, right? And I hope not. I hope that I'm wrong and that, technologies like yours are going to help us get back to taking that time with our family, being more present, right?
and that's the hope is the computer is the interface between the digital world and you. Right now, it supports the interests of the digital world, but not yourself. how does it now support, as we said, for the people, our interests? And let's have a business model, and let's have everything that allows us to actually do what's best for this side of it, the people side of it.
Yeah.
And if the operating system doesn't care about you, the AI is going to slowly sit there and make more and more decisions on your behalf and capture you, and you're completely reliant on it. And so our hope is, have an operating system that protects you, um, and it's yours. It's an object. It's not a portal. The computer is yours. It's an appliance. It's not. It's not. You're on somebody else's land.
Yeah. Yeah. We've talked about flicker. We've talked about blue light. Is there anything else that we missed in terms of maybe the health impacts that people are missing when it comes to traditional
I think it's
computers and
just the
daylight?
difference between emissive light that you hold close to your face with a tablet or phone versus an analog or reflective object. That kind of screen apnea, change in breathing, that change in sympathetic parasympathetic response.
Yeah, that's amazing. I never heard of that one. I mean, I'm not surprised, but I haven't heard about that. That's crazy.
So the nervous system impact, yeah, is one I would like to highlight.
Yeah, and it's so critical, man, because I talk about this a lot. I've had other people on the podcast talking about the nervous system, right? And if the nervous system is dysregulated,
Right.
doesn't matter what gut protocol I put you on, or you have parasites, or you have candida, none of that matters. I will never get, and you see a lot of people chasing protocols and they're chasing these symptoms. They're thinking, if I just do this protocol, I'll get better. It doesn't matter. If your nervous system is not in a parasympathetic state, your body will pretty much reject that stuff and you won't get better because the nervous system's in fight or flight. And I didn't even think about it, but just how much our phones and tech, man, and the blue freaking light can be a disruptor. And I just read James, I think it's James Nestor's book, Breathe.
Breathe. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so to your point, when you change the physiology of someone through their breathing patterns, just by a little bit, people begin to overbreathe. That physiologically creates a panic state, man.
Right.
And that regulates the nervous system. One last thing, we were talking offline before we jumped on, having been a police officer in the past, I had to wear a bulletproof vest. I never thought anything of it. I was talking to a practitioner the other day. She said, Joel, we've done studies showing that the vest actually restricts your breathing by a certain amount, 30%, let's say. But just imagine what's that doing to a police officer's nervous system. We just talked about it. If the breathing system is off, that is putting that officer, that human being, physiologically in a already hypervigilant stress state based on the breathing. So I didn't even realize, man, until you said it, what the frickin' phones and other things do. Jesus.
What's sad here is then we all get angry at each other, right? And it's just like, no, we're whether your example of the bulletproof vest stopping you from breathing or our devices is they're not helping us be the best version of ourselves. So
yeah,
like,
yeah, dude, I wanted to ask you, with this tech, I understand it took you 6 years to build. What were some of the roadblocks? What were some of the challenges that you faced just getting this off the ground?
there's so many. I think the biggest one is, if you ask yourself, why is there not like more innovation in computing? It's because it's become completely an endeavor of scale. Unless you're an Apple or Samsung or a massive Asian company, you basically can't have impact in this field. Like, if you look at it, when's the last time there was a new computer company? It was like Oculus more than a dozen years ago. This isn't a thing where like entrepreneurs are coming left and right, and right. I mean, that's why we have to have blue blockers and this and that, because changing the actual computer is so damn difficult, because every part, okay, are you going to buy 500,000 of them? Everything is set up such that you can only get off the ground if you can do hundreds of thousands of, and that's the scale of it. Wow. And so the biggest roadblock of doing this, of inventing a new display, was getting around a manufacturer who's like, I'm not going to work with you unless you can promise me 1 million units per year to start. And so there's no room for innovation if you can't start small or niche. And so not only did it take years and years to be able to invent the technology, spent a lot of time in Japan, worked with a bunch of professors, then to get into production and convincing a company and getting it to actually work, that was just a massive roadblock. That took almost 3 years in itself. And so I think the world doesn't realize how hard it is to innovate as somebody small, because it is now set up for scale. If you think back in the early day, Apple was small. The industry was all small.
Yeah.
That's no longer the case. They're doing 100 million iPhones. So if you want to come and do something that's going to sell 20,000 units, it doesn't matter. And it's particularly the computing industry, right? If you want to do an infrared light, if you want to do other things, there's a lot of different scale, but particular things when it involves CPUs and memories. And so I,
Can we just call your device an infrared light? Will that help? Can we so we can scale this sucker?
we were rejected by something like 60 manufacturers uh, to build the hardware, and we finally got lucky. We had a very memorable meeting with a very interesting chairman of a Taiwanese company, and they took a huge bet on us. So
Yeah.
I think that's just the lesson for the world is
Yeah.
we need to find out ways to enable more shots on goal, more experiments in some of these crucial areas like computing.
Yeah. Or on that note though, are people coming around, or is there anybody in the Silicon Valley that says like that does is giving you more than lip service by saying, "Hey, that's a great job you're doing," like, and not just saying that, but actually saying like, "Hey, man, how can I help? Like, how could we back this?" Or people pretty much just like, "Hey, man, you do your thing," but like we're Apple, we're not stopping what we're doing. Like,
Oh yeah, the response is night and day versus Silicon Valley and other places. It's almost all of our groundswell is other folks. I mean, they may be in the Bay Area, but they're basically like, whoa, I see the negative impacts of technology. I want something better. Most of the actual tech institutions, be it venture capitalists or the companies and so on, they're like, why? Why would you make something that like my ads don't work on?
right,
Right? Like, why would you make something that is less addicting, which is our main metric of how we make money is the amount of time you spend on it? Why would
right,
we make something that's less alluring? Right? Like they don't have an optimism that people just want to get their job done with the computer and get back to their life. For them, the computer is the destination. They want to make it amazing. And so philosophically, it makes no sense to them why you would make, a black and white, reflective, less stimulating computer. Um,
yeah, true,
and so, but here's the thing, Joel, is don't look at their words and their actions when it comes to supporting young people like us. Look at it with their own family. Steve Jobs didn't allow his kids to use iPhones or iPads until they were 16. And he was happy to sell it to your kids. And I think there's
mm,
just something so damning in that. Or even Mark Zuckerberg not allowing his daughters to use social media. Um, I think that's the most powerful thing is what do they know? If they're not allowing their own family to use it. So
yeah. Yeah, what do they know? Yeah, I mean, actually, if you read Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation, he talks about that. He talks about how Facebook knew exactly what they were doing. They understood the habit loop cycle very well, and they figured out a way to, and that's what they were using with the likes and the comments to create, to hijack the algorithm, to force people to want to come back, to want to engage, to see if they got likes. And so it's all been, yeah, it's all pretty documented. So we can go on and on about that.
and there's like a banality of evil, right? They're not necessarily bad people. They're just stuck in this loop and they're slaves to their shareholders. And so it has to be a bottom up movement of us trying to reclaim it. And yet, to your point, if we don't do it now, it's only going to get harder with AI, where it knows exactly even more what your interests are and they can even further, you know, personalize the manipulation. So
Yeah.
hopefully we can do something.
Yeah, man. Curious. I want to wrap things up here in a little bit, but if people are curious about getting the daylight, where can they go? And I think are you still running like the founders special, or how is that what do they cost? Where can people get them? I guess is what I'm asking.
They cost a little over $700. You can go to daylightcomputer.com. And I believe we're out of the founders edition. So it's the next tranche of things. But
Okay, cool. So $700. That's not bad at all, really, and that's for the tablet.
and we make very little money on that. We were originally going to price it at 1,200, but we wanted to just have the most amount of people. So it's the reality. It's like the Tesla Roadster. You got to start high when you have a new technology, and you can start to scale down the price. But yeah, we think we try to make it
I
competitive.
think 700 is pretty darn fair. I mean, it's a full tablet, right?
Yes, yeah.
And
You get
then
a replacement for an iPad for yourself or your kid.
yeah, and then first and then with that tablet too, I can hook it up to a keyboard if I want and do stuff
Yep.
as well. So
Keyboard and mouse, and use it like a little. Yeah. And that's actually better for ergonomics too. Is you can put it on a stand, and then your neck isn't cocked down. And there's some interesting research about our carotid arteries being slightly occluded because we've all bent down, and so there's a funny theory that we're all 3% dumber because we're all kinking our arteries looking down at computer screens.
Yeah, man. I mean those necks. I mean, they talk about just like if you're an inch forward or whatever, it's like so many pounds of pressure, right? And
Yeah.
so, yeah. And again, physiologically, going back to what we talked about earlier, people that are confident, people that are excited, that are radiant, that are living good lives, typically their shoulders are back, right? Their chest is out. They're looking at you in the eye. But when we see a lot of people that are depressed or anxious, what position are they in? They're in this kyphotic
Right.
position,
Right.
hunched over. How are you doing? Low tone. Like they're not happy, right? So there's all that physiology that ties into it too, I think, beautifully. Dude, talk to me about what are some, I'll let you go here in a second. Talk to me, what are some exciting projects that you're working on now? I know obviously we have the daylight that is out and about, but what's new and exciting? What can we expect from you?
I think pushing it forward on the operating system to make it distraction free, blocking kind of all this predatory, apps and feeds and websites, figuring out how to be able to make identity and payments decentralized and sovereign in the operating system, and then starting to work on building the phone and building a keyboard for the tablet. So our hope is to make a viable, healthy computer company. And if Apple was a public benefit corporation and focused on health and mental health, what would it look like? And so that's our vision of what to build.
Yeah, brother. Love that, man. Totally support you. I am resonating everything with everything you're saying. Last but not least, man, tell everybody where they can connect with you. I know you mentioned the Daylight computer, the website, but just remind everybody again where they can connect with you or Daylight and learn more about everything that you guys are up to.
Yeah, I would love to hear from you too. I'm Anjan, ANJN, at daylightcomputer.com. Always trying to figure out who is this most useful for. It's been fascinating to see the amount of people reaching out who want this for homeschooling for their kids. Uh, and you can find me on Twitter at Anjan Katta, Katta is my last name. And at daylightcomputer.com if you want to order the computer, or at daylightco to follow us on Twitter or Instagram. So it's a real pleasure to be on here and show you a little bit about what we've made. So,
Yeah, brother. Amazing. Anjan Katta. Appreciate you so much, man. Thanks for being on the show.
thanks, Joel.